Welcome to the WitchTips podcast. I'm your host, Austin Castelli. Today we will be discussing the Bell Witch haunting. Some of you may have stumbled upon the 2005 horror movie, An American Haunting. In the movie, set in the early 1800s, a suspected witch vows to ruin her neighbor, John Bell's, life after a land dispute occurs between the two. Promptly, strange occurrences begin plaguing the family, and an entity targets the Bells' youngest daughter. While the movie is entertaining, it is not an accurate depiction of the events that are documented. John Bell moved his family from the Carolinas to Adams, Tennessee, sometime around 1810. He bought a large plot of land and built a stately house for his family. He was a high-ranking member of the local church and a well-respected member of the community. In 1817, Bell was inspecting the progress of his crops when he spotted an animal in the distance. He readied his gun and slowly walked in the direction of the animal. When he was close enough to study it, Bell noticed that the creature was unidentifiable. According to his account, it had the body of a large dog and the head of a rabbit. Bell shot at it multiple times, but it ran away unscathed. Bell assumed he had missed his mark. Later that night, John Bell and the others residing in the Bell home reported hearing strange noises that sounded as if a person was banging on the outside of the house, and occasionally the sound of an animal gnawing could be heard. These noises continued for an unspecified amount of time. The men of the house would constantly try to track down the source, but never found one. Eventually, the noises began to come from inside the house, but still no source could be found. The Bell children claimed that gnawing noises were present inside their bedrooms. Then, the blankets began flying off of the sleeping children in the middle of the night. Something kept stealing their pillows, too. The activity only increased from there. The disembodied voice of an old woman was heard and began singing church songs and quoting scripture. Sometimes the voice seemed to be taking part in a conversation. The voice eventually identified itself as the Witch of Kate Batts. Kate Batts was a former neighbor of the Bell family who had had several run-ins with John Bell after a slave purchase between them had ended badly. She had died recently before these events started to occur. General Andrew Jackson, who would later become President of the United States, was a family friend of the Bells. He had heard rumors about the strange happenings at the Bell home and decided to investigate for himself. Upon arrival in Adams, Jackson's horses suddenly became unable to pull the wagons, as if something was holding them back. Once he realized that nothing visible was preventing his horses from moving, Jackson proclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, that must be the Bell Witch." One of Jackson's traveling companions scoffed at the idea and was promptly beaten by an unseen force in front of the men, while a woman's voice laughed. Jackson's men pleaded with him to find another place to stay for the night. They were terrified by the violence they had encountered, and they hadn't even entered the house yet. Jackson, however, was not terrified and insisted that they stay the night on the property. Bell tried to keep the strange happenings in his home a secret. He feared that his credibility would suffer if people knew that he believed his house was haunted. But once the entity started to focus its attacks on Bell's youngest daughter, Betsy, he had no choice but to seek help. The spirit would pull Betsy's hair and slap her, leaving bruises, welts, and handprints on her. John Bell reached out to his close friend, James Johnston, who was skeptical at first, but agreed to help. Johnston and his wife decided to stay at the Bell house for a night to see if they too would experience the haunting. The Johnstons experienced the same amount of violence and disturbance that the Bells had that night. The haunting lasted years. Eventually, Betsy became engaged to a man named Joshua Gardner. The entity in the Bell house took a special dislike to Gardner and verbally taunted and assaulted him and Betsy. The so-called witch often spoke to Betsy while she was alone, warning her against marrying Gardner. This led to the end of Joshua and Betsy's engagement. While the ghost certainly chose to abuse Betsy more than the rest of the family, there was no doubt that she hated John Bell the most of them all. By 1820, John Bell was an old man and would fall ill frequently. On December 20th of that year, John Bell died in his bed. A vial containing a dark liquid was found by his bed, and one of the Bell sons gave a drop of the liquid to the family cat, who died instantly. Immediately after, the spirit's voice exclaimed, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, which fixed him." Bell's son became enraged and threw the vial into the fireplace, where it burst into a plume of smoke. At John Bell's funeral, laughing and singing was heard, coming from nowhere. After John's death, the haunting subsided for a few months, but the ghost returned to deliver a message to the Bell family. It said that it would return to the home in 7 years. According to the Bell family, the spirit returned exactly 7 years later, in 1828, and began to torment John Bell Jr. When the entity felt that he had been tortured enough, it informed the family that it would return in another 107 years. When that time came around, it was 1935, and there was only one known relative of John Bell still living, a Dr. Charles Bailey Bell. No one knows if he was visited by the spirit. The Bell property is still an active paranormal site. Though the house itself is almost non-existent, it remains a popular spot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. Electronic equipment is known to malfunction on the property. Photographs taken there usually contain mists, orbs, or ghostly figures. Many visitors report experiencing the most activity near a cave on the property, and some believe that the cave is where the spirit resides.